About 7 or 7:30, he'd go down to the laboratory and experiment, only stopping for a short time at noon to eat lunch, sit down from the house. About 6 o'clock p.m., the carriage would call to take him to dinner, from which he would return by 7 or 8 p.m. to resume work. The carriage came again at midnight to take him home, but frequently he had to wait until 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning, and sometimes return without him as he decided to continue all night. This had been going on for more than 5 months, 7 days a week. When I was called down to the laboratory to see him, I found him at his bench, about 3 feet wide and 12 to 15 feet long, on which there were hundreds of little test cells that had been made up by his corps of chemists and engineers. He was seated at the bench testing, figuring, planning. I then learned that he had thus made over 9,000 experiments in trying to devise this new type of storage battery, but had not yet produced a single thing that promised to solve the question. In view of this immense amount of thought and labor, my sympathy got the better of my judgment, and I said, "Isn't it a shame that with this tremendous amount of work you've done, you haven't been able to get any results?" Edison turned to me like a flash and with a smile replied, "Results? Why, man, I've gotten a lot of results. I know several thousand things that won't work."
Oh, heavy.
Oh, here we go again, kids. Another episode of Woodworking is Bullshit. Your favorite podcast about why we do what we do, not how we do what we do. I'm your host, Paul Jasper of Copper Pig Woodworking, scientist by day, woodworker by night. And of course, across from me in the chair is my boy, Eric Curtis.
¿Cómo estás, mi amigos?
Fine furniture maker and content creator. And today we have two guests. Very excited. Two of the most influential, well-spoken, generous, and prolific makers within our community, Jimmy Diresta and Bob Clagett. Thank you both for making the time to discuss what is arguably a difficult topic today.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So today is about failure. And it's just even asking the two of you to be on an episode about something so inherently, negative and associated with negativity in many ways. I feel like it was a big ask, and I pursued the two of you, like chasing you, like, hey, how about that podcast episode? Can we do it now? Can we do it now? So thank you both for agreeing to do this. And,
we've talked about this quite a bit.
On your podcast.
We're really good at failing. So.
Yeah. On our podcast, making it.
Yeah.
Episodes,
Right. Yes.
500 episodes plus.
Yes.
We've
Several of them are about failing.
Yeah, quite a bit of them are. Yeah.
So, what we're going to get to today is like, how do we define failure? What does it look like for each of us? You often hear this kind of rah-rah, like, oh, failure is so great. But yet all of us resist it or avoid it to some extent, right? So there's a complexity there between it being a teacher and it being a waste of time or a frustration. And so we're going to drill down into all of these topics. But first, I thought just to get the creative juices flowing, we could start with what Eric and I call a lightning round, where I'm going to give some quotes from Thomas Edison, who is arguably one of the finest inventors ever, who I think probably had, tens of thousands of failures along the way. And I have a whole bunch of quotes, and what I'd like from each of you, and I'm just going to I'm going to say the quote, and I'm going to call on one of you, and you have to agree, disagree, or it depends. All right? just to get the juices flowing. And we don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but I just thought it'd be a good way to warm up. All right? So let's start with this one. Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up. Bob, agree, disagree, or it depends?
It depends, but I think more on the side of disagree.
Okay.
That's completely immeasurable. And it's a nice sentiment. But
how would you know?
Yeah, there's no way to know that.
How close you are?
Yeah. And there's no way to know how many people have been in that situation that were close and didn't know it. So as a quote,
It's kitschy, but not necessarily true.
Yeah,
All
in
right.
my opinion.
Here we go. Number 2. The successful person makes a habit of doing what the failing person doesn't like to do. Jimmy.
I suppose that's true. That's true. Continues to carry on. Continues to ideate. Continues to iterate.
Okay.
It depends. I know you didn't ask me, but like, it depends. I mean, in your example, yes, if people stop doing those things, but the person that fails also doesn't like to take out the trash, and that doesn't mean successful people take out the trash. It depends. It depends on what you're talking about.
Okay.
I might be a contrarian on all this stuff. Sorry.
I'm closer to you, Bob.
We're just getting the juices flowing. Eric, you're up. You ready?
Hit me.
Show me a thoroughly satisfied man, and I will show you failure.
It's so hard not to take that in a sexual direction right off the top. Yeah. I say it again one more time.
Show me a thoroughly satisfied man, and I will show you failure.
I would say I would tend to agree with that, because if you're going to be satisfied with your life, looking back on it in the end, I think that necessitates taking risk and being honest with yourself. And risk will inevitably lead to failure if you stick with it long enough.
Okay. I read that quote differently.
I did too, but that's an interesting... Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was basically suggesting that if you're satisfied, you're destined to. If you're satisfied with something, you're a failure.
Well, that I would disagree with. I was thinking more like, again, looking back on it, if it like from the standpoint that you are satisfied, you have lived a life that was striving towards something that was honest to you, and if you do that, invariably you're going to fail time and time again.
Interesting. Okay. Let's do one more round each. Ready? Bob. Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration.
It depends.
Nobody asked me, but I agree with that.
See, I think it truly depends on what you're talking about, because you think of somebody like Edison. Let's take that example because we've already talked about it. Yes, there was a lot of trial and error. There was so the genius comes out of experimentation, persistence, and that means you're going to sweat along the way, right? Take somebody like Chopin, who unnaturally can compose a huge variety of music. It's not one type of music. Chopin was all over he was the Radiohead of 2 centuries ago, or whenever it was. Just it came naturally to him and tormented him in ways that were not like, I work really hard at it. He had to write that music, all of that music, and so it depends.
I feel like you're talking about sort of savant aptitude. That is,
Yeah, you can't discount talent.
Right.
But also, if you're in that headspace that you just described, was he not, and I don't know Chopin really a lot, but was he not doing it almost compulsively, and that you could kind of equate that to like hard work, quote unquote? Like it's still putting in the hours, even though he had that natural gift to do it.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I think it, in that example, and maybe there are people like this in every discipline. Yeah, the compulsion is I just have to do it. Not that it's hard for me, not that I had to practice a whole bunch for it. It's just a part of me being who I am is getting this thing out. And so I guess that's just a different way to look at that same, work hard or can't help but to.
Yeah,
are two sides of that same thing. So I don't know.
All right, Jimmy, you ready?
Go.
We often miss opportunity because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work.
I'd say that's true. Absolutely. I'm surrounded with a lot of people that say, "Oh, you're so successful. You're so successful. It's easy for you. You have 10 trucks. You're so successful." But my brother loves to. He's like, "Yeah, he fucking works till 3:00 in the morning every fucking night." And that's what my brother always yells at his 2 kids, that I I told these guys the other day, my alarm goes off at 2 a.m. It says go to bed. So that's when my day basically ends. 6 days a week, most likely. Usually Sundays, I try and reserve to watch TV late with Rachel or movie after dinner. But typically 6 days a week, I work way past midnight every night.
Wow.
And a lot of people don't do that type of thing. And they're like, how could you get so much work done? I go, because I don't take any leisure time, because work for me is leisure time. It's disguised as leisure. It's disguised as work, but I enjoy it.
Well, and then we also have the whole cultural conversation about work-life balance. And then a lot of people will see that as like, well, Jimmy's mentally unwell.
That's
he's
fine.
Not hitting that, He said it's not true.
Yeah, call me whatever you want. I'm happy.
Also, I only ever met your brother once, but I have to say that was a spot-on impersonation. That was dead nuts, man.
You might have met John. I'm talking about my brother Joey, who's like always. My brother Joey's like the guy in a van down by the river. He's like he gives everybody an inspirational speech when he meets him for 3 minutes. And angry. He's kind of like Jocko Willink in that way. But, yeah, I totally believe there are a lot of people in my life that. It seems to be, okay, I'm an Xer, right? I'm a Gen Xer. Is that right? I'm a Gen Xer, right?
I am, yeah.
58. And then the millennials and then the Gen Zs they're like, oh, I'll go work on YouTube. But they don't realize I've had 3 full life careers before I started YouTube that all culminate in a video. I've had as a visual artist, as a prop maker, as a toy inventor, as a prototypist, as a machinist, as a woodworker, as a carpenter. That all comes together when I do a YouTube video. And then so some millennial coming up or some Gen Zer will go, oh, that's what I want to do. And then they make movies about them like hanging out and farting in front of the camera with their friends. Like they have no real.
Have you tried that though?
I mean, sometimes it works. There's a
probably
couple
some
guys
of the biggest channels, honestly.
Yeah, right. Like these Twitch stream people that become famous just literally for chit chatting in front of the camera, and then all this whole like soap opera dynamic develops because who's dated who and who's talked to some underage person here or there, and then all of a sudden they're on Philip DeFranco, who's like approaching my age, and he's still sitting here talking about all this, twink stuff. It's like right next to like Trump news. I'm like, what's going on in this world?
That makes me think of the quote that people are envious of what you have, not what it took to get there.
Yeah.
They only see the final result. Yeah. They see Jimmy at the bandsaw and they go, well, I can do that. And then to your point, like you spent 30 years doing all of the other things that give you a skill set to make shit.
And to buy 19 bandsaws, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
right.
You
Like 25.
Probably more
change.
than that.
Yeah.
And then you got that. I could do that too if I had 19 bandsaws.
Yeah.
So we've been flirting around, failure, but we haven't really gotten into it. And what I'd like to do now is to sort of dive into like how you define failure, like, and to really kind of dig into this topic a little more. But before we do that, I want to give a framework that I read about in the psychology literature. This was advanced by Amy Edmondson. She's a Novartis professor of leadership and management at Harvard Business School. And she wrote a book, and it's called The Right Kind of Wrong, The Science of Failing Well. And in it, she advances a theoretical framework. And I think these are particularly helpful when taking on topics that are messy. Okay, not that this framework is necessarily right or the only way to see it, but at least it gives us some structures with which to kind of place our thoughts and digest our thoughts. So she talks about 3 archetypes of failure that I think is pretty interesting. So already we're dividing failure into multiple things, right? The first archetype is what I think she would call simple failure. It's a case where we know what we're doing, we know the field, and we make a mistake. You're backing your car out, you forget to turn and look, and you run into something, right? That is a simple failure. You know how to drive a car, you know how to look, you just fucked up. You just made a mistake. All right, so that's simple failure. And I
did that this summer.
You did that this morning?
No, this summer. I drove into a fire hydrant with my brand new truck.
Now, one can argue we can learn from simple failures, Jimmy, like checking what's around
for the fire hydrants.
Yeah. Using that aerial view of my fancy car.
But I think simple failures are not the kind we tend to grow from. It's really a nuisance. Okay. And then the second archetype of failure is what she terms complex failure. So this is where it's like a perfect storm. Like there's a multitude of influences coming together at the same time to lead to a failure. I think that you could think about this like economic breakdown in the supply chain. You could think about this football team losing, right? A football team losing is not usually dependent on a single mistake, right? It's usually the special teams failed on something, the defense failed in some ways, the offense, the coaching wasn't there, the strategy was right. It's really a compound or multifactorial type of failure. But again, this is in the context of what's going on. We know how to play, like football teams know how to play football. Sometimes things are out of your control, I would say, but yet it's still in the realm of understood stuff. All right, so simple and complex failure. Both of those aren't particularly enriching when they happen, and I think we tend to avoid them. But I think it's the third type that I think is the most interesting, which is intelligent failure, what she calls. And think of intelligent failure as sort of the right kind of wrong or the good kind of failure, thoughtful forays into new territory. And Bob and Jimmy and Eric, like I think all four of us do this all the time. Thoughtful forays into new territory that may or may not work. We know the probability of failure is high. We know that going into it because we don't know what we don't know, but we're willing to take the risk. We decide we want to try something. We put forth a hypothesis. We think we know what we're doing. We give a shot. It may or may not work. We know the probability of failure is high, and we get information back. And this is exactly what I think, the quote on the front of the show that Edison was really talking about is this intelligent failure. And it has genuine uncertainty to all of it, as opposed to like simple failure or complex failure. Now, she argues, here's the last point, and before we go into this part of intelligent failure, which I think this is what we call good failure, right? I think all of us are talking about this. So she said there's 4 attributes to intelligent failure. Number 1, it's new territory and we don't have the knowledge. Okay. Number 2, it's in pursuit of some goal. Number 3, it's a hypothesis-driven approach. It's not just random noodling. And 4, we take risks and we make the failures sometimes as small as possible, just big enough to learn. And so we're not wasting immense resource. So like this is like, think about it like you do a pilot project, right? But you don't do a huge pilot project right off the front, costing millions of dollars. You do the smallest, right? You dip your toe in. So I thought, I don't know, what do you guys think about this as a framework, like simple failure, complex failure, intelligent failure, as sort of a way to think about or categorize failure?
I personally don't think about it too much. I just hope, I guess failure in light of a recent example that happened this morning, failure a lot of times is when you get caught with your pants down. What happens alone in the shop a lot? Oh, I shot the saw blade across the room. Good thing I kept my fingers, Oh, whoops, this piece of wood snapped when I thought it was going to be in the clamp in the right direction. Oh, that split when I put a screw in it. Those are all little failures that happen. But when it happens in front of a client, when you make this basketball wall for some stupid reason that they asked for, Bob knows what I'm talking about, this wall full of deflated basketballs for a gym wall. And then you get the phone call this morning that one of the basketballs is falling off. And I have to try and figure it out from Jersey City, 150 miles away. That is when you fail with your pants down. And that's, I don't know where that falls into that falls into the, first world problems. It's no big deal. I'll drive down there and put your dumb basketball stuck on the wall again. But in light of the fact that it cost a lot of money and there was a lot of hubbub and the installation and this and that, and there's a lot of pomp and circumstance because of the client, then it feels like a big, and you got to deal with that. But that's the type of failure that gets me nervous, is when you get caught with your pants down in front of a client. And if we're talking about that type of thing, or if you get caught with your pants down in front of your audience, if we're going to talk about YouTube entertainment, you do something, you could choose to show it as a teaching moment. You don't have to always show all the things that go wrong. Or when you actually put up a movie and you don't realize you left the cripplers out, and then all the fans would point to you. And I wouldn't consider that failure. I would just consider that, learning on the job. So that's there's a lot of it. And I guess when there's high stakes jobs involved, when there's money and there's commissions, and then you hang something on the wall and it falls off. That's embarrassing.
Well, does the pressure of the situation change the type of failure that's involved? Because like the way that you described it, and I don't know about this basketball wall, that it sounds like that one ball falling off.
Yeah, it's a grid of about 12 basketballs on a grid.
Okay. So one of them falls off.
Yeah.
And it sounds like for whatever happened, mechanical failure,
Yeah,
adhesive
mechanical
failure, whatever
failure.
it was. Yeah. That
Glue.
sounds like a simple failure, but because of the stakes, it becomes a more complex failure.
Yeah, it's just a vanity failure, really. I mean, it's like I said,
vanity failure is a good category.
there's no big deal because no one got hurt. No, it's just a stupid basketball that was deflated and glued to the wall, and it's actually didn't even fall off. It just drooped.
Well,
it's not in the right spot.
What you're doing is you're interjecting another axis. It's not just whether it failed or was successful. You're putting like an emotional axis on it.
Yeah,
like,
it's true.
How did it make me feel? Like, what was the context of how I looked in?
Well,
in
I mean,
but
as far as
that matters, man. You know, like to your analogy about football, like
if you're talking about career.
Yeah, if you're practicing place kicking and you miss a field goal, no big deal. If it's the Super Bowl, like you're not going to have a job next year.
Right.
You know, so the context of it does matter, even though missing a kick could be a simple failure.
Failure of not realizing and then, having some sort of fatal car accident. That's a huge failure. That's a little bit more obviously of a catastrophic situation. You got to figure out what you did wrong, who's liable, God forbid anything like that should ever happen to anybody. I'm reminded of the time I cut my pinky off in the workshop. I cut my pinky 90% through. The skin kept it in place. I rushed to the hospital. They sewed it back on. I was so embarrassed. Everybody I met, there was like in the emergency room, like, I cut my pinky off. I'm a woodworker. They're like, what happened? I'm like, I don't know. I hit the saw blade. That's like what I felt like. I'm in the ambulance. I'm like, I cut my pinky off. I'm so stupid. Everybody I talked to, I literally had to constantly sort of make an emotional amends to everybody I spoke to. And then I got to the point, I remember being in therapy, physical therapy, after they sewed it back on and the pins are out and everything. And I'm next to some guy that works for Lilco, for Con Edison in New York. It's the electrical company. And he, a cutoff wheel went through the back of his hand and cut all the tendons on the back of his hand. He's like, yeah, it happens. I was like,
yeah, it's a Tuesday. What are you going to do?
Yeah, he's like, it happens. Yeah, cut right through my glove. Can't use these two fingers. And
Jimmy, when was that? When did that happen with your pinky?
March 2010.
Okay, so you were doing YouTube by that point, yeah?
No, it was like about 2 years before I started YouTube. Maybe a year before I started YouTube.
Okay, I was just curious if you had been doing YouTube.
No, I had just, it was like within like 18 months before I started my first YouTube channel.
Would that be a thing that you acknowledge on the internet? Like given the level of embarrassment that you had?
I got over it when I realized it's a common practice. In fact, one of my friends, and I probably told this story on our podcast, my good buddy at the time on Long Island's very, very, very talented woodworker. And he called me and he's like, excuse me for cursing. He goes, what the fuck? He's like a Long Island douche. He's like, what the fuck? How could you cut your fucking finger off? What the fuck is wrong with you? And he's like trying to give me tough love. I was like, I don't know. I said, I slept. I don't even know. I said, I just was doing something stupid. He's like, you should be smarter. Your hands are your living. Don't fuck them up. Meanwhile, what happened, Mickey? Mickey slips, cut 3 fingers off about a year later.
Yikes.
Did you call him?
Mutilated his hand. And he's an accomplished guitar player.
Oh no!
And I called him and I didn't go, hey, remember about 18 months ago when you were trying to shame me out of tough love? And I just called him. I said, Mickey, what happened? He goes, I don't know. It was over in a millisecond. He goes, all of a sudden, fucking holding my hand together. So I don't know the point I'm making, but.
Well, it happens, man. It doesn't matter how long.
Oh, so I did talk about it. You were talking about how I was embarrassed, but then I realized it does happen to other people. That was the point I was making. And then I did talk about it. I did a table saw tips video, and I talked about it, and I told everybody what happened and how it happened. And I wasn't embarrassed about it at that point. I mean, it happened. It's part of the fabric of who I am at this point. And
part of the reason I was wondering is because I was curious. I feel like so many people in the YouTube game with smaller channels typically will use that as a clickbaity way to grab views. But it sounds like the way that you did it was intentionally like, hey, learning moment. This shit could happen to everybody. Let's
At
be
that
safe.
point, it was almost
Not
2
like
years earlier.
a thumbnail with you holding your pinky way out here kind of situation.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's an example of how that's a simple failure, right? And we don't really, I don't think simple failures are great in a general sense. I think we want to avoid simple failures. Like, yeah, you can say that was a learning moment, but like, shit, do you have to really cut your finger off to learn to use a table?
Yeah.
So
I wasn't being safe. I really wasn't. I'm not going to sit here and deny it. I
So-
wasn't being
so-
safe. I was being too confident. That's what happened.
So I, without being contrarian about her framework, I do think like simple failures and complex failures are largely to be avoided. We tend to want to avoid them. And see, the reason I bring this up is because like some people say, "Oh, failing is so great. We learn so much from it," and then other people, but yet at the same time we avoid failure like the plague, right? Which is it? And I think it depends on the type.
Yeah, it depends. So, like, if I have 10 sheets of walnut plywood, I'm making extra sure I'm not going to screw that up because
Right.
I just paid $175 or $200 a sheet of plywood. I'm making sure that every move I make, if I have a sheet of just Home Depot plywood, I'm like throwing it through the saw, letting it flop on the floor, dragging it on the corners. So there's different types of failures. Again, talking in terms of YouTube entertainment, making things for a living. When it comes to when my business failed with my brother, we kept trying to navigate the changing landscape of our business. We were in the subcontractors in the toy business. We would take somebody's product and develop the packaging. We project manage the project from concept prototype all the way through to sales meetings. And when a small toy company was small staffed, we would come in as their pinch hitters and pick up the slack. And we were getting anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000 draws a month from these companies as like a subcontractor to handle all these things. And then one by one, these companies started going out of business, and we didn't really know how to make the change. And then one day, my brother says, "We don't have the money to pay the rent, so we have to make a decision." I spoke to the landlord, and we can get out of the lease 10 months early. And I said, "All right, let's do it." And within a week, we downsized, gave most of the stuff away in the shop. We had a shop with an overhead door on the street in Manhattan in the Lower East Side. I mean, we had, a building that right now probably rents for $30,000 a month, but we were paying maybe $2,000 a month at the time. And this was in the 90s. And that we both felt like failures, but you know what? We got to survive. We got to just, and we both navigated. We ended up going to work for one of our biggest clients who did not go out of business. And we ended up working for him through till 9/11. And then when 9/11 hit, that put him in. Then I went full time just doing stuff on my own. That's when I got into interior design. So you navigate these changes and you look back and you go, am I a failure or am I just developing experience?
Well, that's my question, right? Like, is that a failure, or is it just?
I personally didn't
like
think so.
Yeah, everything has a life cycle, and when that life cycle ends, you shift. You come up with a new way to make money.
Yeah. So like I was going to jump in because that's like the way that I look at all this. Well, one, to jump back, you were talking about the framework. I think the framework as far as like the small, medium, large thing is fine, but the axis that it's on, you mentioned the axis, I think that might be only one way to look at it. I'll say it's wrong, but it's one way to look at. It sounded like she was talking about domain knowledge. You know the domain of driving, but you accidentally do a thing. You know the domain of football, but you accidentally turn this. You know how to run a table saw, but whatever. So I think that's one axis, but it spans every axis. And I think the stakes, like Eric, you started to mention, the stakes are probably, at least for me, a more visceral way to look at it. The stakes of backing into denting your car, cutting your hand off, like the stakes of Jimmy cutting his finger off changed my life specifically. So, I think when you look at the effect of the stakes of your failure, then it starts to define like whether it's big or small, in my opinion. But again, I think you could also do that with growth. You could say growth is the vector that you're talking about. Is it over here? Is it over here? How much of these actually push you in a good direction? And I think Paul, you've heard me talk about what I think about failure is it's when you stop to me. So the feedback loop you get from experimentation, from doing something that doesn't work, you stay in that loop and you keep trying to like integrate new information, and you try it again and you try it again. And when you decide to get out of that loop, you either hit your goal or you've gone through the loop enough times that it's not worth continuing on. And that to me is failure. I decided to stop trying to make it work. And that's my opinion. And a lot of people don't share that opinion about failure, but for
Cut
me,
your losses. It depends on you.
Sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes like it's okay. How do I move on with my life? I fail at this thing and be done with it. I'm out of the loop, right? And sometimes it means that I've exhausted every possible thing and I didn't get what I wanted.
Is it that you failed, or you just didn't get there yet? You just
I think there are certain cases, and I think to the question originally,
and you stop going, I think it's a failure.
Is it, or is it you just like, fuck, I need a break from this. I just need a break. I don't have to judge it as a failure. I just need to stop for now.
For now, that's not stopping. That's a pause, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But and also there are times when you could get through a loop and you could keep trying something and you had literally exhausted every possible outcome. There is no come back to it in a month and try it again. Take a divorce. There is no, I'm going to go back to this thing and give it a shot again.
That's true.
I mean, I have not been divorced, but from the people that I know who have been through that, when it's done, it's done. And it's not a matter of like, I could try again with her. No, it did not work. Walk away, So yeah, maybe both. Maybe both options are there.
Okay. So actually, Bob, what you described about like, I try a thing, I take the risk, I buy the materials, I give it a go, I obtain information from that try, I leverage that information, and I try again, and I change a variable, and I try again, and I change a variable, and I try again. Like this is the scientific method this is
absolutely
the scientific method, right?
Yeah.
This is what every scientist learns in school, and this is what we do to approach difficult problems in the unknown space. So, to me, when we're applying the scientific method into like in the shop, let's say you're trying to make something new, and you're like, I think it might work like this. You buy the materials, you take the risk, you try it. It doesn't work. See, that doesn't sting for some reason. That doesn't feel like a mini failure to me. That is like, oh, wow. Almost like Edison was saying, I've learned what didn't work. I can see what it kind of worked a little bit, but it kind of didn't work for this reason. That doesn't feel like failure for some reason to me. Maybe it's just that I'm a scientist, so I've done it, for the last 25 years, every day of my life. And it just seems like that is just what life is. That's just trying to learn something new. I don't know.
But is that just coming into that experiment with a mindset knowing that there's a high probability of failure? And so you're looking for the needle in the haystack. So when you just find a bunch of straw, you're not disappointed. It's a framework of looking at it rather than like if you are producing whatever you're producing. Let's say you run a production shop and you've produced 10,000 of this object, and then one of them gets fucked up because of whatever reason.
Yeah.
Well, then that's a failure. That object failed because you know the process. Yes. You assume success. Yes. And then when it doesn't happen, it's a failure. Right. But what you're describing is going in knowing that whatever you try first is probably going to fail. Right. Yes. It's like the door to the cabinet that I made the last couple of months. Yep. It had this spring-loaded central latch where I could put a lock in the middle of the door. And I went through probably close to a dozen iterations of that, knowing that every one of them was getting a little bit closer, but ultimately none of them worked until the last one did. So the first 11 were failures in that sense.
Did they feel like failures to you at the time?
No, it never stung because it was just literally like, okay, I need to see what happens if.
Right.
And if it works on the first attempt, that's magic.
I always call it, if you're trying to invent something or iterate or develop something that didn't already exist, you need a reference point. You need a starting point. And the starting point is that first 3D print that, Bob's iterated on a few things lately. You need that first 3D print to look at it and go, you know what? It needs this now. I didn't see it until I saw it. I didn't have the wherewithal to make this decision until I see this version of it. And that's really what a lot of it is. And then if you look at, let's say you make 50 of them and you come up with the best one. There's no failure in any of those. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, but see,
iterating.
do you guys sense the tone of our conversation about this? It's like suddenly it's like, oh, no big deal. We try. Yeah, you
There
don't know
is-
what you don't
yeah.
know. Let's give it a try. We'll see. No big. Like it's like I feel like the temperature has been turned down. Whereas Jimmy, when you started talking about the fucking basketball falling off the wall, and you're like, ah.
Well, like I said, it's really more the failure there is shame.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like-
about stakes again.
But
Yeah, yeah.
why is one like associated with such intense shame and like Bob?
because
like
because when people
no big
watch,
deal, right?
when people are watching, there's a higher level of whatever
Well, I'm a
performance
professional,
anxiety.
so I'm supposed to know that
Yeah.
PL glue doesn't stick to a blue basketball made in China. I'm supposed to know that.
Yep.
I don't know.
So I think a lot of this and a lot of things that are emotional, take grief, take sadness, take happiness, whatever it is you want to talk about. All of those are filtered through your own personal way of internalizing results, right? So like if your girlfriend dumps you, you get to internalize that however you want to. And so you can choose how big of a deal that is and what the impact is going to be on how you look at your relationships going forward. And I think from what you're saying, Paul, about, you experiment you do the scientific method every single day. We all build things in the shop every single day that have a high probability of not working the first time. And we've conditioned ourselves through all of those experiences to internalize a certain way. Mm-hmm. And we may internalize woodworking or whatever in a different way than we do emotional stuff with our friends or a family or whatever. But you've got a gauge, right? Everybody has a gauge for what you do with input and how much of it you want to take in and start working into the system and how much of it you just want to whatever. And so I think when it comes to building stuff, at least, we all have a higher, whatever than we do. Okay, I need to take this in and be upset about it and try to figure out how to make it not ever happen again, Well, relationships, you have a different balance of what you internalize and what you let go.
Is our competency, coming back to your point about domain, is our competency affecting the way that we see failure in the workshop? Like what I'm wondering about right now is like putting ourselves back in the mindset of when we first started, however many years or decades ago that was. When we failed in the wood shop, it felt like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know how this is going. Maybe I feel like a failure because I wanted to make a pretty cutting board for my girlfriend and it looks like dog shit because I don't know what I'm doing. Now, 15 years later on for me, I make a mistake on a client piece and I'm like, no big deal. I can fix it.
Yeah, you just gotta figure out. It's just I gotta just take a different route of hide it or remake it.
So, well, did you guys feel that level of, we'll call it shame, I guess, for lack of a better word, when you did fail early on in your careers? Was that a thing? Like, Jimmy, I feel like you've been making since you came out of the womb, so I don't know how you approached it.
Honestly,
Bob, I don't know your background. Like, how did you guys, when you first started making things, when you did inevitably fail, did it affect you emotionally?
I honestly think that I'm immune to the emotional effects of failure because when you look at the 8 or 10 TV show opportunities that I had that didn't go anywhere, or when you look at the umpteen times I was up to bat in the toy store that didn't turn into a Rubik's Cube, or when you look at the umpteen times I met millionaire clients and it's like, this is your big break. I'm going to work for Leonardo DiCaprio for the rest of my life. I worked for him for 2 months and never talked to him again. Like all these opportunities, I was going to go work for this rich guy in Asheville, and that turned out to be a big failure.
But did you have that same level of resiliency when you when you were a kid in the workshop?
Right?
Honestly, I
How could
think,
you?
Well, I think this is a very emotional story, and I'm not going to cry. But I remember all the experimentation as you should say, here we go.
I said, yeah, you will.
No, I won't. But it's funny. I always have these tuxedo cats, right? They all keep coming back. Rachel says they come back. They're coming back to you to give you penance. So when I was a kid, probably 5 or 7 years old, I watched my dad do stuff in the shop, and then I would always experiment. And you have these reference points in life that, if something falls over and hits a kitten, it could kill the kitten, right? And this is what happened to me when I was about 6 or 7 years old. I saw my grandfather had left this jack, these old jacks, these bottle jacks, where you crank the handle and the thing screws up slowly. Looks like a little bowling pin. And I put it under a bench that was really tall. This bench my dad always used to cut wood on. It was a long, kind of like a picnic bench, but a standalone picnic bench. It was skinny and tall. So I put the jack under one side of it, and it was already too tall to begin with. And I'm wobbling the jack, and the thing is wobbling. And then it falls over and kills a baby kitten that was just born in this kitten litter that was nearby. My dad always used to feed the local cats. So we always had like 7 or 8 cats running around the backyard. And this cat, and I was hysterical. And it's even now why when I don't have little Yorkies in the shop, I'm always like making sure the wood's going to fall on like anything. And, I never liked having the Yorkies in the shop for that reason, because cats are a little bit more agile when they're adults. This cat didn't see it coming. And I remember crying my eyes out. My dad said, he goes, well, now you know better. That's basically what my dad said. And that was a catastrophic failure where a little animal died. And, I lived with that for the rest of my life. And I always felt guilty about it. I remember talking to therapy about it when I was in my 40s. And even now, and it's funny because it was a little black and white. It was a tuxedo. And now I've had like 6 tuxedo cats by accident. They've all come back to me. And so I remember that as a failure as a kid. I remember the other time as a failure, this is also when I was a real little kid. I picked up a sledgehammer and I picked it up over my head. And I was like, this was before the cat incident. So I was always making these stupid failures where somebody got hurt. I picked the sledgehammer up and it got high enough and it fell against my face. And that's why I have a scar through my eyebrow. You can't see it anymore, but there's a scar through my eyebrow, right on my orbit. The end of the sledgehammer hit me right on my orbit, up through my eyebrow and all through my cheekbone.
Oh my God.
It's amazing that you are a whole person, honestly.
And then all my failures I'm equating to getting injured. Another time my brother was cutting with a razor blade and it slipped and I was standing behind him and he poked me in the face with the razor blade and it cut my eyelid right here. I almost lost my eye. Cut my eyelid right there. That was about 10 years old.
See,
so
Jimmy,
these are all, when I think of failures as a kid, I think of all these times I got injured or that I injured something or somebody.
Well, yeah, this is coming back to the stakes question. Like you're talking about physical harm and literal life and death. Like that's.
Yeah. But when I think about failure in the workshop, to me, it's all just learning experiences.
Yeah,
but
but coming back to the original framework, all of these examples you're giving are simple failures. You know how to use a razor blade.
But the stakes are huge.
Yeah, it's true. The stakes are high. And those are the ones that are really embarrassing. But for some reason, all of us agree, like the intelligent failure of taking a calculated risk in the shop to try and break new ground or learn something new is not particularly shaking to us emotionally. Now, I think to some new woodworkers, Eric, this is what you're driving at.
That's what I was trying to get at. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that emotional resiliency, is that a thing that some people like Jimmy just naturally have, which is wonderful? Or is it a thing that, it's a thing that definitely can be learned? But like Bob, again, when you started making things, I don't know when that was. What was the emotional experience of failure?
Well, okay, so I grew up in a house where I grew up in my grandfather and my father were both dentists, self-employed, kind of not self-made, but like not afraid to go start a business. They go to school, they learn a thing, they go start a business, and they're successful at it, and they raise a family, right? So my other grandfather was a contractor. He would build a building and then move on and build another building. And so I followed him around in his truck and job sites and like watch him build a McDonald's. And it was just like,
that's cool.
You do a thing, you go do a thing. Right. And so I grew up with the kind of feeling surrounding me and all of my family was, hey, just go do a thing. If it doesn't work, do another thing. And so I have never been one. I don't think I'm particularly cocky. I'm not one that feels like I can do everything, but I'm certainly not afraid to try. And so even as a kid, I was encouraged to like, I don't know, go give it a shot. It was about everything, about music and about building and about art and about music, again, the different musics and, like all the things I was just encouraged to do. So when it came time to, as an adult, get back in the shop and start actually using tools again, like, I don't know. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing, but I wasn't worried about it. So I didn't feel like a failure was going to, maybe I shouldn't be one that does this. It was like, well, I don't know. If it doesn't work, then I'll just try something else.
Well,
so I think that has been I don't want to say superpower in that, like it makes me special, but I think it's been one of the things that's allowed me to continue to do what I do is because I don't get emotionally like about doing a thing wrong in the shop. Now, the other side of that, we've already talked about stakes. The other side of that is something that affects people. I had I had a team of people. We had a building. We had a bunch of stuff a few years ago, and all of that started to fall apart because of economic dynamics. Some of it had to do with me, some of it didn't. Right, but those were my good friends who then had to go find new jobs, and that, of all the things that I have been a part of my entire life, felt like a failure more than anything else because there was a direct personal effect on other people with families, with kids, with insurance, with whatever, right? And that I don't know if it was any of those specific 3 things that we talked about in the framework. It was
no, I think it is. That was
maybe all of those at the same time.
That was a complex failure, right?
Yeah.
Complex. There were multitudes of things coming together, the perfect storm that led to the business.
But that one almost wrecked me. To answer your question, Eric.
Yeah. In using that example, did the failure of the business, like, did you bear the emotional weight of the failure of the business, or did you feel like a failure because the business failed? Because I feel like those are 2 separate things.
Say that again?
Like, did the failure of the business just make you feel bad because you had to let your friends go and everybody's lives got affected, or did you feel like a failure because the business had to end?
Maybe both. And I think, that's tough. I think both. Yeah. In different ways. And I'm not even sure how to say that. I'm not even sure how to like define which, but I felt both of those things.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Now what's interesting about that failure is that, we talked about the feedback loop and the exit and stuff. I didn't exit. I didn't get out of the loop. I didn't stop doing what I was doing, but I changed the goal, right? So rather than like, hey, let's build a thing with more people that can be more complex and reach more and cost more and be more and have more and more, I switched the goal to, hey, let's do less. Not because I had to. I could have tried to pursue the more thing, but it was like, I think I actually will be happier when the dust settles if I'm doing less. If I'm trying to not reach as far and I'm trying to be in my own space with my own thoughts and my own creativity and my own goal and not try to include the opinions of great people, smart people, but just not trying to be all of this web of things. And so instead of staying in that loop, I switched the loop, right? To like, let's do less. I want to be less. I want to have less. I want to focus more on fewer things.
The mental strain, I'm sure, was a lot of alleviated.
Oh yeah, it was like that moment of that switch from like too much to a lot less was one of the best moments of my life, and has taught me so much more about who I am and what I actually want and what I'm capable of and where I should be and just like so many things. So it's hard to say that that's a failure in the end of it, but in the middle of it, heck yeah.
I want to bring up a good point because I'm thinking in terms of like my so-called success with Walmart. It was a complete failure. We went ahead and sold all these products to Walmart. Everybody sees it on the shelf. They think I'm some huge success. I'm still getting buyback bills in the $30,000 from Walmart. I just ignore them. But I forward it to my partner. I'm like, deal with this. I'm not paying them. They can go pound salt. They're not getting $1 out of me because my name somehow is on some bill somewhere. And the name of the company is Jimmy's Woodshop. And but the good thing is only your immediate friends know that you failed at Walmart or you failed at your own personal expansion of your business. Everybody else thinks I'm a successful Walmart toy salesman. Everybody thinks Bob has a staff of 10 people. Nobody pays attention. So when it gets to that, you know personally what not to do next or what you feel happier doing versus what you thought you were happier doing in the past. But again, for me, I guess it goes back to that sense of shame of like, everybody seeing you with your pants down, the basketball falling off the wall. It's it all depends on what kind. Do you really feel like anybody that looks at Bob or me would assume that we were the most successful people on YouTube, or one of the most successful people. Whatever we decide to do, we get every product we ask for, we get everything we touch. We're getting paid
in
for
fairness,
every bottle of glue.
You are two of the most successful people in our space.
I mean, I
In that
point
way.
to Colin. Like, look at Colin first. Look at Alex Steele.
Yeah. Well,
I'm still on the junior. I'm on the junior team.
I don't
I'm
know
down
about
on the
that.
elementary school team. I do think I was, as you were talking about, like the fact that only your friends know you fail. I was like, maybe the sense of shame is the difference between what you guys are doing and becoming a con man. Because if everybody thinks you're successful and you just keep selling it over and over, man, that's a con.
Well, the other thing too is it's like there's no shame in it, but the Netflix thing, we did this Netflix show, and I meet people all the time out and about, and they're like, "Oh my God, we met a Netflix star." I'm like, I could have been moving furniture for Netflix. I just happen to be doing things on camera. I mean, that's the pay scale. I said, do not. I'm glad you're inspired by the things I've said and done and the things we've built on the show. That's really wonderful. And children think that they're meeting a big star. But at the end of the day, technically speaking, the show is a failure. They didn't make more, but it's out there, and it's another piece of the patchwork of my career that I'm proud of. I don't look at that and think of it as a failure, but Netflix probably does.
That's an interesting. Go ahead, Bob.
What, Bob?
Well, I was gonna say I don't see that as a failure. To me,
I don't.
Like if your goal was we're gonna keep doing this show forever, then yeah, I guess it failed. But at the same time, you were a part of a really fantastic section of media. Mm-hmm. Everything, life has seasons, right? Everything has a start and an end. Nothing lasts forever. And that piece of media that you were a part of was excellent.
Thank you.
Start to finish. And so even if it didn't jump the shark in season 5 and then become a thing that nobody actually wanted to watch, you made a really good thing. So I wouldn't call that a failure, even if it didn't continue. But that's
what was interesting to me is like you said it was a failure, but you're also proud of it.
Well, you had the same experience, Eric. Exactly.
For sure.
Exactly the same.
And so it's one of those things where you're like, okay, well, I did a thing as best I possibly could do it, and I was proud of the result.
Yeah.
And that it was received in a way that I disagreed with to some extent. Like I would have loved to gone back and do a season 2.
Yeah.
That is outside of my control.
Yeah.
I can't force the executives to make a financial decision to bring the show back. But that it exists and that is the thing that people took a lot of joy in, then it's a success. So it can be both of those things simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, when I was, so coming back to the question of like how you guys started, because both of you guys were basically just like, nah, I've always had this like deep confidence. Like I'm just good at what I do.
No, that's not what they said.
Don't hear that.
That's
not what they said.
I'm picking on you guys a little bit. But what's interesting to me is like my experience is I had like deep performance anxiety when I was younger. And I did like all of the things, music, sports, etc. And anytime there were people watching, I was like, I was terrified to fail. So terrified to fail that I was focused on the potential failures and not on like the play I was supposed to be running. Right. And being in the wood shop, and I don't know if it's because nobody was watching or it's because just natural aptitude, that was the first time in my life where I felt like failure wasn't a reflection on me. Like I just had a hard-headedness about it of like, whatever happens, I'm going to figure out how to make it work. And then I think over time that translated to being comfortable failing in front of other people because I learned how to fail and I learned the value of failing. But early on, like it was in every other aspect of my life, failure was like, well, I guess I'm a piece of shit then. See you guys later.
Yeah. So we're a soccer family. We have we have 4 kids, 3 of which play soccer at a pretty high level. And my second oldest son is very talented. He's excellent, and he's gotten even better. But he's had a lot of back and forth around his confidence when it comes to this. So what you just said, like, he's a prime example of that. When it comes to him in the backyard working hard by himself when nobody's watching, he's out there. He's doing the drills. He's at it, right? when he gets in a game, or historically, when he's gotten into a game, he loses the ball, makes a mistake, he immediately shrinks. You can see oh no, everybody just saw me do that. And in soccer, at least, I'm not a big sports guy, but I know soccer. And in soccer, if you hang your head for a half a second, you've given up.
Yep.
You've given up the next 2 minutes of play.
Yep.
You cannot do that. You have to stay engaged. And so for him, the way that we've tried to help him, a lot of that is just his own personal belief, in what he's capable of. That's nobody else can really affect. But we've tried to change his perspective on kind of like why he's doing it. And that comes back to what you were saying about like performance anxiety and even doing it on YouTube, doing anything on YouTube in front of people. If the reason you're doing it is for how it's going to make you look to the other people, then you have way more opportunities to go off the rails and for things to go wrong and for you to feel it really deeply. If the reason you're doing it is because you like doing it, then the results don't really matter that much. And so
I just said that to someone the other day. He was asking me like my opinion on YouTube. I said, you got to do it because you love it, not because you want to make money.
Yeah. And so for him, it's like, how do we get him to just love it so much that he just wants to keep his head in the game and just wants to, if you lose the ball, now you got a new challenge. Go get the ball back, not like, oh man, everybody saw me do that. And so, he's a young teen. And so there's a lot of things happening at the same time around his understanding of himself and becoming a man and all these different things, right? So he's both learning how to care about the right things and also learning how he as a growing person deals with caring about the right things and caring about the wrong things. And so there's a lot there, but his experience has been a really good example for me to kind of like, I need to make sure that I'm really listening to the right voices. And the one inside my head that says, you suck and everybody saw you screw up, that's not the right voice. So, in trying to talk to him about his, what I would call small failures, and how you get past them, I've ended up learning a lot myself, in trying to coach him into, enjoying what he's doing more. But anyway, that's just a similar example that have been dealing with for a couple of years.
This goes a little deeper. How many times do you feel like a failure because there's one person watching? There's one person. You don't care about the entire world. There's 1-2 people watching you, and you feel like a failure because they saw what you did wrong.
Depends on who those 2 people are.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
yeah.
Well,
I'm thinking in terms of your son's soccer game. I mean, maybe he feels shame because the coach might have picked on him, or the coach is having. He might feel shame because he's expecting you to.
Right, he might not want to let dad down.
Yeah, or maybe there's a crush that he's feeling stupid in front of. I'm not saying him particularly, but just in general, I know from being a public figure, there are times when I want to put a troll in his place, and then he comes back at you and he stings you with a truth that you didn't want to hear. He's like, you wore those pants yesterday, something like that. I don't know. I'm just trying to be silly.
No, that's an interesting question though, because I guess it then comes back to stakes, because it like.
Yes.
I was a musician, I found it a lot harder to perform in front of a small group of people than a much larger group of people.
My brother's a comedian. It's the same thing. He says,
if you're performing for like a dozen people
in plain sight.
Yes. If you're performing for a dozen people, you see everybody's eyes. If you're performing for 1,000 people, it's a wash. Nobody
or for
exists.
instance, like when we do a public appearance and like one of your close personal friends in that city shows up, you just like, please just leave. Don't. I don't want you to watch this live performance. You're just going to feel completely self-conscious. Could you just go in the bathroom until I'm done? We can talk afterwards. We can go to TGI Fridays later.
Yeah. Well, what we've been talking about, and I didn't appreciate this coming into today, was like I came in at this from a sort of a intellectual angle. Like there's certain kinds of failures that are simple and certain are complex and certain are intellectual failures. Like you try a new thing and you don't know, right? Like that's sort of the axis I came with. But what you guys are talking about is an entirely different way to see it, which is what's at stake. And it's like the emotional risk or that we're taking.
For me, honestly, like when it comes down to failure, I think the only real failure is the emotional shame when something breaks, or or when a project fails. And how many times do we commit to our audience? And our audience is a blanket term for family, friends in our audience. And then we don't follow through. How many times me and Jocko made the joke, how many times we commit to losing weight to each other, and the two of us are two fat, pudgy dad bods, no matter what we do. Like, what do you do? We can't, no matter how hard I try, I can't keep up a pace.
So
it all depends on shame. But when it comes to shop failure, I'm like, whoop, well, I guess I should have tightened the bolt on that saw blade.
Well, and shame's
cut it again.
Shame's a good way to say it, right? Because if I make a table and it's in my house and something like whatever the
wood splits,
the wood splits, fine, and I go, okay, that's fine. Like, I'll take it back to the shop and repair it. If a client calls me up with that same table and they go, dude, the wood split, like the stomach drops
100%,
because you feel shame that like you sold this thing, they gave you money for this thing, and now they're like, dude, I thought you knew what you were doing. What the hell?
100%. That is like the biggest shame there is when you give clients something and they call you back and they're like, the breadboard ends are like coming off the edge. I'm like, that's what it's supposed to be.
So then really the big deal about failure is about processing our ego and our emotional damage as a result of failure. If it's small, if you're alone, who cares? No one saw. I don't feel bad at all. If it's in front of a crowd, you feel shame. So here, let me read you a question that a patron gave us about failure. And I think this bears on exactly what we're talking about. He said, the pyrography cabinet I've been working on has been a tough one for me. I generally welcome failure as a great learning tool, but this piece has had me questioning my abilities at every turn. It really ruined my confidence for a bit. How do we push through a piece or come back from a situation like that? And this is Eric Brockvist. And when I read that, decoding it in light of what we've talked about, it's like I was taking the intelligent failure approach. I was trying a new thing. I'm experimenting, right? Like, and I think the four of us are outliers. We are so comfortable doing that. That is like, that's a Tuesday, like whatever, all day, every day we do that. So that's no big deal. But this is a newer woodworker who's saying, it had me questioning my abilities at every turn, and it ruined my confidence. Eric, this comes back to like, there's an experience factor, learning to deal with the aftermath of maybe it's not embarrassment to others because I think it's only him, but it's like he's almost embarrassed himself. Like, I thought I was better than that, and apparently I'm not, and I'm coming to grips with it.
The anecdote to that is just make it again. You made it once, make it again.
That's what I told him.
Anytime you do anything, you do it twice. The second time is always better. My patrons know this. I haven't shown this on anywhere. I mean, I talked about it on the podcast for a second. I'm making these hair dryers boxes. It's a stupid concept for marketing for some liquor company where there's this box that looks like a hair dryer. It's the silhouette of like a 1950s hair dryer. I made the box 4 times yesterday. The 4th version, I'm getting close to being good. I still got to make it. I might even have to make 150 of them. I don't know. They're still trying to figure out what they want out of me. But now I know the approach. It took me 4 times to get it to where it's like, okay, now I'm on the right path.
Okay, Eric, did you hear that? Jimmy Diresta had to make it 4 fucking times, and he's been making since he stepped out the womb. So,
well, I mean, I never made a box.
Stepped out the womb? That's an odd way.
Like walked out.
I never made a hair dryer shaped box. I mean, I never made a box that looks like a hair dryer like that. You know?
Yeah.
So it's a stupid thing, but you know.
I was going to say, that looks terrible. No, I'm just kidding.
It does. No, that's the good one.
I'm just kidding.
That's the good one.
I'm just still kidding. Okay. Anyway, that comment to me, it was both dancing on Eric's point that there's a progression to this of feeling comfortable with failing, but it also brought up the point that it doesn't have to be in the sight of someone else. It can be embarrassing or humiliating just for yourself because you're trying to build your sense of self-esteem, and there are setbacks along the way. I think all of you are like well established in who you think you are, who you know you are. You're way down that path. And I think for a new woodworker, they're still trying to figure some of that out. And that's what I read out of his question.
Well, and I think there's always a deeper thing, right? But I think there's a deeper thing there as well that you could look at about identity, right? If you really if you scale yourself and view yourself on your ability, then you can either only do things that you know how to do and be really confident in your own identity because you're only doing things that you've proven that you can do, right?
Wood
And then
turners.
if you or
Just
if
taking
you
random strays out there.
Sorry,
if you take like new things all the time, you're gonna do them wrong all the time. And if your validation of your own identity is based on success, then like you're gonna feel terrible all the time, right? So I think just generally people put their identity in the wrong things often. And so if you are trying to qualify who you are based on what you can accomplish, then that stuff is going to hit a lot harder than if your identity is in something else. And maybe that's a whole different episode, but
Well,
I think that's
an excellent point.
Bob, there is this intuition, I think, that was recently in the last 10 years about parents, about what to tell your children so they don't fear failure, right? Or fear trying. This is exactly your point. The article, and I don't remember where it first appeared, and I'm sure you've heard it. It said, don't praise the outcome of your children. Don't say like, oh, wow, you're so smart, or you achieved this. Praise their effort, because if you praise them always having a successful outcome, then when they think they might not have a successful outcome, they don't even want to try, right? They don't want to try something new because everyone tells me I'm smart, and if I try this thing that I've never tried before and it doesn't go well, that means that they won't see me as smart, right? But
Right.
if you praise their effort, it's always about giving it a shake, always about taking a step towards trying something.
And I think it's not even just about effort. I mean, effort's part of it for sure, but I think praising analysis and praising risk are probably even more useful to them than praising effort, because effort is based on strength, it's based on persistence. But like if a kid looks at a problem and analyzes it and says, it's dangerous for me to try this, I mean, I got to praise that, right? If you know it's dangerous and you don't do it, like not, I'm going to jump the bike off the roof because I think I can. Like, good effort, but sorry about your leg.
Sorry, guys.
Eric Curtis, what's up?
So I think, I totally agree with you, but I think it's very important to analysis or like calculation, forethought,
That's
think of it however you want to, risk, and being willing to risk something emotionally, in school, in sports, in whatever, and just praising the effort to, or the willingness to risk something.
That is
in that same
great,
line.
excellent point. And actually, that brings up something I wanted to ask you about, which is with taking risks in the shop, right? Let's talk about this intelligent failure, right? Trying to learn a new thing, breaking new ground in the shop, something that all of us do all the time. I was curious about your risk tolerance with that. So this is something I was talking to Conrad Sauer, who makes these, the most beautiful hand planes on the earth. Conrad and I were talking before the show, and he's like, some of this plays into risk tolerance. How big of a risk are you willing to put into something new? Both financially, like how much money are you going to put on the line to try this new thing? And emotionally. So for all of you, I'm curious, like when you try something new, Jimmy, I know you talked about ceramics being kind of like tough, and sewing and Bob, you've been all over the place, and Eric, I know you try things all the time. How risk averse or risky are you guys?
Well, I bought a house that I'm trying to bring back from the dead, so I think I have no tolerance at all. I mean,
And he buys dead cars all the time.
I buy cars. I look at cars and go like, I could fix that. Yeah. So I mean, I literally bought a broken down house. I'm trying to fix that. That's a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars. And as long it's funny now, I'm at a point now where like if I make 10 grand, I'm like, ooh, now I could buy the material for the roof. Because if I get like $4 grand, I'm like, ooh, now I can get those pieces to do that. It's not even like, oh, $10,000. I can keep that in the bank. I'm like, oh, now I can buy the roof rafters. Oh, now I got a little bit of money in my. I got my YouTube earnings. Now I can go and buy $1,000
A hamburger.
No, I usually get a couple $1,000s. I was like, oh, my YouTube earnings are in. I'm going to go buy lumber. That's
Can I just say what I think everyone's thinking? Fucking Jimmy, you are cut from a different cloth, baby.
We knew that already.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think that I like risk. It's if I don't take risks, I get bored very easily. But I do hedge my bets a little bit. Like I'm not I'm not a degenerate gambler, if that's a way to phrase it. So for example, when I wanted to start the YouTube channel, and I made the decision to see if I could make it work, I took a part-time job at a cabinet shop again to make sure that I could pay the bills. I wasn't going to be like, well, let me go broke trying to do this thing. Let me get a little thing going part-time. I'll focus on the channel part-time. And then hopefully eventually I get it to a point where I don't need that other thing anymore. And that worked out within a year. I didn't need that part-time job anymore. And so that's fine. But starting the channel in thinking that could be an avenue for my business was a risk. I just wasn't willing to put all of my eggs in that basket.
Yeah, no, I think that's just being smart. I still take work that I don't videotape. I take commissions all the time. Mm-hmm. Just with the amount of YouTube content and stuff that I make, I can be a little bit more picky with the work I take.
Yeah.
I don't have to do built-ins, and I don't have to be on site to install things as much as I used to. So I'm just more picky.
Bob,
but I still do work that will never be a YouTube video. Okay.
And that's good for people to know, by the way. Yeah. I feel like a lot of people think that you just, if you have a YouTube channel, then everything you make has to be a video. And it's like, dog, sometimes you can just take the work or just make a thing for your own edification. And both of those things are also good.
Yeah. I make a lot of things in the leather shop I don't show. Okay.
I think on the risk, I'm not risk averse. But when it comes to how much investment, how much money I'm willing to put in it, I think I just I've got a very clear idea of the priority list in my life and my family and my kids and their future and what I can offer them and how I take care of them and stuff is absolutely at the top of that list. And so, the amount of money that I'm willing to throw at something that seems like a fun idea is downstream from all of that. Now, if it comes to if there's a pile of material in front of me and I want to see if I can make a thing out of it, let's do it. There's no limit there to if I get burnt or I break something, whatever. So I guess it depends on which part you're talking about. But yeah.
Paul, where are you at?
Yeah, I'm probably the most risk averse of all four of us. And I am, I think by nature, being a scientist, I am highly calculating with risk. I will take a risk. I will put money, but I have to almost know up to say 90% that it's going to work out before I'll put that money on the line. For example, I got into metal engraving about 4 years ago now. And that was a fairly sizable investment to even try it. It's $3,000-$4,000 to buy the equipment on this thing that I didn't know how to do. I didn't know if I'd like it. I don't know if I'd be good at it, but I just did enough hand carving and enough drawing and enough pyrography I just knew that those skills would be transferable enough for me to figure it out. And so I was highly calculating. I think in general, I'm not a huge risk taker, but because of my scientific training, I take baby risks and I iterate them and stack them on top of each other. And once I do that enough times, it looks like I made a huge progress in whatever. A drawing or engraving or pyrography or inlay or woodworking. But it was like 1,000 tiny little risky steps, but none of them were big. I tend not to do that. And I was like that with girls too. I could never lay it on the line and ask the girl out. I had to know the answer was a yes before I would ask her. And
so you're saying you were afraid of failure?
I was such a weenie. Now, Eric, Eric, that was before the woodworking maker experience. Like that was before, because I think, and before my scientific training.
So you saying you're a playboy now?
Oh, playboy! I'm married. I'm not a playboy now. But I think both the rigorous scientific training, like 15 years of school, right, to learn to be a scientist, that coupled with the gauntlet that is making and woodworking has totally changed my ego part, where my ego is not attached to success or failure. I have failed some, like, Jimmy, the whole idea of shame, I don't really feel it much anymore. Maybe it's because I don't take big enough risks, but even if it fucks up, I'm just like, I am who I am. It doesn't change who I am.
Like you said, it's all proximity to who paid what for it. It happens before I drop it off.
Yep.
Back inside, fix it.
Well,
it happens after I leave. I'm like, I failed. But I'm so sorry.
I think the lesson for me, though, was the more times you experience mini failures and get over it, get over it. Like by the time you're into the tens of thousands, it kind of wears off on the ego, at least.
Yeah.
I think it.
Another interesting thing, talking about risk, and maybe this ties back to the identity a little bit, but I think the persona that we have for ourselves in the shop, in the making, whatever thing you're doing, the persona has a lot to do with how you view risk. So like Paul, I've seen a small amount of your work, finished work, not progress work, not, like experiments and stuff, but your finished work, highly detailed, highly polished, highly finished. And so if that is the benchmark for what risk you're willing to take, each risk is calculated against the greatest effort you've ever made towards something. And so risk is a pretty big deal. I personally, my persona that I know about myself is that I'm a prototyper. Like my final version is maybe 0.5. Right? I am not a finished woodworker. I am not going to do fine detail stuff. That's just not what I care about. It's not what I want to do. And so I'm a prototyper. So the risk for me to give something a shot is I might get to 0.1 and like, that's cool. That's almost as far as I'm going to go anyway. So if it kind of works, it's not really that big of a deal. So, what you're used to calling your finished product probably has a lot to do with how far you're willing to step on those first.
That's a really interesting framework.
That's a great point.
I wonder, like, as you were talking about that, I was thinking, like, something that I always remind myself is there's only one piece I'll ever make that's the best piece I've ever made. And so everything else is just an object, right? And so, but really what that is kind of an emotional workaround of, like, if it doesn't turn out to be good, then it's like, well,
this wasn't
what are you
it.
going to do?
Yeah.
Like the aim is to make the best piece, but like I only ever get that once. And like you can do better, and like that piece can change over time. But if it's a bogey, like, that's fine. That's pretty good.
I have that feeling every single time I pick up a Japanese handsaw and I say, this is going to be the most finest cut I ever make.
Oh my
all
God,
of a sudden
Jimmy.
it's like a quarter inch off the line. I'm like, I should just quit doing woodwork.
Oh, brother, that's all I use. They're so great.
No, it's
So this is a tangent, but it's similar into what you just said about the project being the best one you've ever made, or there's always one that's the best. So my kids are teenagers and they're into relationships for the first time in the last couple of years, and so when you see your kid get their heart broken for the first time, it is rough. But every time that's happened, or every time there's like a hard thing, I try to remind the kids that if you're lucky, you get one relationship in your entire life that works. Every other one fails. It has to fail, otherwise you couldn't get to the next one, right? So there's a little bit of like consolation in make an effort, do your best, but no, this one's probably not the one, right? And maybe the next one is, I don't know, but you're still kind of, it's the same idea. Like you're going to give it a go, knowing that this might not be the best thing you ever do, but eventually something.
And it can still be fun along the way, right?
Sure, yeah. And you grow and you learn and you understand people better, and there's great stuff in all of those things that don't work.
I always say relationships are like walking through a dark room with no shoes on. You're going to keep hitting your toes, and then
Are there Legos on the floor?
Yeah, everything. And then by the 15th time you walk through that room, you're going to walk through without stubbing or stepping on anything. That could take you 2 tries. It could take you 10 tries. In my case, it's taken me 10 tries.
That's really good.
All right. Well, this has been great. I want to end with like a last question, and we can wrap up. This has been a fascinating discussion. You guys have absolutely brought in new angles I didn't see coming into this, which I think is amazing. The question I want to end it is this is from our patron Devin Perkins, who I think tried to make Jimmy cry into making it 500.
Devin.
The question is failure required to be the best artist one can be?
Hard yes.
I think people get lucky. I mean, failure day to day is inevitable. So, I mean, I guess, but if you're going to fail at your art, like, say, Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo digging into a big piece of marble and they realize halfway through the marble's flawed and they got to go start again, they're not going to look at that and be like, nah, I guess I'm not going to do this. They're going to go start again on another piece of marble. So I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Well, Jimmy, is failure required to be the best artist you can be? So for you, Jimmy,
I think
to be your best version of yourself, was failure required?
Yeah, because you need all those reference points. Like I said, I don't necessarily consider them failures as much as reference points. Mm. I know if the chisel's at this direct angle, you can't chisel up. You can't chisel up the grain because you're going to get a chip out. How many times have we learned that trying to carve something fancy? Paul, you carve fancy things. You got that perfect fleur-de-lis, and then all of a sudden, like the key piece that makes it a fleur-de-lis is like shooting across the room. Yep. You're like, you just pause to watch where it lands so you could glue it back in and not tell anybody.
Exactly. Bob,
you don't have to carve up the grain.
Is failure required to be the best artist you could be?
I think it's inevitable. I mean, I think it goes back to one of those quotes at the very beginning. Like, if you're not failing, then that means you haven't tried hard enough to be an artist. I would think, I think it's,
or whatever.
Or whatever you're doing. It's an inevitable part of process. Process has to happen for output to exist. And so, I think it has to be.
I think of Ray Kroc, isn't he famously tried this many different businesses until he discovered he could steal McDonald's from the McDonald's brothers?
Now, also, though, all this is all semantics, because like you can talk about failure, and even with a framework, we can all be thinking of a different thing. And art is one of those things that is, I think, supposed to be an expression of the artist. And so theoretically, there's no wrong way to do that. And so it's a weird thing to say that I tried to express myself several times and it didn't work. And then this is a more pure expression or something. I don't know. I'm not really sure, but that's a tough one to use in the case of art, which is highly subjective to the creator.
It's a fair point.
But I don't know.
It's not like building a bridge where, like, if it falls down, then it failed.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, I think
that can be part of the performance art, so you could disguise it.
It was supposed to fail.
Well, I think in terms of artists failing, it can only be judged by themselves. I was trying to convey this, or I was trying to get something to look this way or convey this idea, and it doesn't really. So, I mean, I guess only you can decide as the artist if you failed or didn't fail.
But then art is seen by a viewer. It's
that's true.
You can't control the perception of the person seeing.
That's true too.
Another thing with art that we really, with life, in the terms of failure, we haven't really touched on is financially. If you fail financially, is that, if you're an artist that makes beautiful art but nobody buys it, are you a failure?
Ooh, that's a hell of a question to end on, Jimmy. I'll tell you what.
Should we take that in the after show?
I like it.
Let's take Jimmy. We'll take that into a short after show. All right. That's a good one. Well, both Bob, Jimmy, and of course Eric, my bae. Thank you guys for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you guys. That was a great chat.
Extremely thoughtful. Thank you so much for your viewpoints. You both, I know I speak for the entire audience that, you both have set the tone in the maker community for quite some time about what it means to be a maker. And I know you probably don't feel that way. I'm just doing what I enjoy. I'm just making it work for me. But do know that I think so many people follow your example, and about not failing and not getting down on yourself, trying a new thing has really helped probably more people than you realize.
Thank you.
So thank you. All right, y'all. Go ahead, Eric. Yeah.
I was just going to say, thanks, friends. We'll see you in the after show.
Yeah. Yep. If you want the video feed of the after show, just subscribe to our Patreon, and we'll see you there. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Bye.